What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and all that kind of stuff. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's get into today's stories. My ex's wife impersonates being the real mother of my kids. I, 33 female, broke up with the father of my 2 children, 11 male and 9 male, 7 years ago. We weren't married or anything, but our breakup was amicable and we co-parented on good terms for a couple of years. Then he met his wife, and once I met her, things changed. It was clear she didn't like me or the fact that X and I could get along. When we met, she called me the kids' other mom, implying she was the mom, glaring daggers in my direction when I told her I wasn't the other mom but just the mom. She would call them her boys, and she said she was the boys' mom whenever she was speaking to me. She tried to push my ex back and ordered all communication about them to go through her instead of him. And when I refused, she told me I didn't have the right. Once that fight happened, she started sending me photo updates whenever X and her had a day out with the boys, or if they did anything with them for a significant amount of time. She'd text me anywhere from 3 to 5 photos and say she had a great day with her husband and her children. I saved all of that because I didn't like her attitude toward me. When I tried talking to my ex about it, he told me she was trying really hard to be good to the boys, and I needed to accept it and help her take on an active second mom role because they had trouble getting the boys bonded to her. I told him how she spoke to me wasn't acceptable, and he said it came from insecurity, and he felt like I was a big enough person to know that. While we were talking, she texted me, saying I had no right to discuss her children with her husband. I showed X and he told me it was just her being insecure. But this was the breakdown in our co-parenting relationship, because I didn't appreciate the fact I was supposed to let his wife walk all over me and push me out eventually, because it was clear she wanted that. She'd get into a snit anytime she wasn't given full parental access, which means she wasn't able to add her family and friends to the school pickup list, and she wasn't able to change which pediatrician they went to see. X never fought me too hard on that stuff, but she sure as hell tried to. She also hated that she couldn't take them out of state to visit her relatives whenever she wanted. She introduced herself as the kids' mom every single time we went to a parent-teacher conference, or she showed up at a medical appointment for our youngest who has some health issues. We actually returned to court twice over this. X and her were told by the judge that she was not the mother of the children, and she did not have the right to impersonate me when it came to school or medical settings. The judge also warned that the court would not take kindly to any alienation of the children. X's wife tried to claim I was engaging in it, and that the proof was in the kids not calling her mom even though they were very young when she became their mom. The judge asked for proof and claimed that wasn't proof. The second time we went to court over this, there was a documented incident of her saying she was the kids' real mom in front of them, and the judge restricted certain things she can do. She can't do drop-offs of the kids, and she can't show up to appointments or school meetings that require both parents. That decision pissed her off immensely, but the good thing is she contacts me far less now, and that works for me. I try to make something like co-parenting work with my ex, and I focus on the kids, but apparently X and her have been through some stuff. She found out she can't have biological children, and they were rejected for adoption. The boys have expressed that they don't like her, which I knew a little about because X requested permission for family therapy for them, which I consented to because we already had the boys in individual therapy. But therapy is not helping to foster a closer relationship. She came to me when they had the boys and info dumped all of this onto me at the front door to my house. I almost closed the door on her, which she noticed, but kept talking about her issues and then told me to have some compassion for her and at least hear her out and try to help, since we're both the mothers of the boys. I rolled my eyes when she asked me for compassion. I didn't even try to hide it, and I had no sympathy for her. None. I can't say I'm upset that my kids don't like her, seeing as I think it would open up the avenue for her to try harder to push me out, and would possibly open them up to being alienated against me. She got into another snit at the door and I told her to leave. She was insulting me, but I moved away from the door so I couldn't hear her. She followed up with 10 texts that night, and then my ex told me I owed his wife an apology for rolling my eyes at her. It's funny that she wants compassion and sympathy for her situation, but also doesn't want to offer any of her own. She didn't acknowledge at all that her behavior, because of her insecurity and her struggles, is causing problems for everyone else. But she doesn't really seem to care about that. It seems like she only really cares about herself. Her showing up at the door and saying all that to OP was not an apology. What she was saying was, I know I'm acting irrational, manipulative, and controlling, but please allow me to keep on doing this because I deserve compassion because I can't have kids of my own. So please let me try to continue to ruin your relationship with your kids and let me push you away as much as I can. That's what she was really saying there. She wasn't apologizing, she wasn't admitting to any wrongdoings. She was just telling OP what she thinks she deserves. She's making someone else's biological children the object of her insecurities, and the entire family is suffering for it. This sounds like it's going to be one hell of a parenting situation, OP. So best of luck, I guess. The HOA president's long goodbye. When I moved into my suburban neighborhood, I expected peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our homeowners association president, Todd. Todd was the worst kind of leader, the kind who loved power but hated accountability. He enforced ridiculous rules, like fining people $200 for leaving their trash cans out a minute past 9 a.m., but blatantly ignored rules when it suited him. His own yard was a mess of unpermitted structures, and his fence was taller than allowed by city ordinances. But Todd's true sin? Using the HOA as his personal piggy bank. At first, I tried reasoning with them. My fence was slightly off color because the approved stain wasn't available, and he fined me $500. I explained, provided receipts, and asked for leniency. Todd smirked, said rules are rules, and walked away. That's when I decided I would take him down. Not with screaming or public arguments, but methodically, legally, and in a way he'd never recover from. Todd's first mistake was underestimating me. I volunteered for the HOA board under the guise of wanting to get involved in the community. I played the part of the eager, naive newbie perfectly. For 2 years, I attended every meeting, quietly observing how Todd operated. I learned he controlled the board by bullying other members and burying them in paperwork. He'd push through votes when only his allies were present, and conveniently lose paperwork submitted by dissenting homeowners. I kept my head down, took detailed notes, and waited. My goal was to outlast his term as president so I could begin making changes. Then I discovered Todd's second mistake. He wasn't just a bully, he was a thief. Todd loved to brag about how he kept the HOA's finances in order, but something didn't add up. The annual HOA fees were high, much higher than in similar neighborhoods, but the common areas were falling apart. The pool was closed half the summer due to maintenance issues, and the landscaping looked like it hadn't been touched in months. I started digging. As the HOA treasurer, Todd had access to all the accounts, but he was notoriously cagey about sharing financial details. I asked for the budget during a meeting and Todd laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." I filed a formal request for the financial records, which under HOA rules, he was required to provide. Weeks went by with no response. That's when I started talking to neighbors. Turns out I wasn't the only one suspicious. Over a dozen homeowners had requested access to the budget over the years, only to be ignored. One neighbor claimed Todd had used HOA funds to install a new patio at his house, while another swore he'd seen Todd's kids at the community pool during its maintenance closure. Armed with these suspicions, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, forcing Todd to provide the records. He stalled, but I wasn't backing down. When Todd finally handed over the financial documents, they were a mess. Invoices were missing, payments were mislabeled, and some expenses were downright bizarre. A $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that didn't exist. Thousands spent on administrative costs with no explanation. I cross-referenced the HOA's bank statements with public records and found the smoking gun. Todd was funneling money to his personal accounts. Even better, I discovered Todd had been inflating contractor fees, pocketing the difference and splitting the profits with his buddy, a shady contractor who handled most of the HOA's maintenance. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with spreadsheets, photos, and notarized statements from neighbors who had seen Todd's antics firsthand. I waited for the annual HOA meeting, which was typically a snooze fest attended by only a handful of homeowners. But this time I made sure people showed up. I spent weeks knocking on doors, explaining what Todd had been up to. I didn't share everything, just enough to get people angry and curious. On the night of the meeting, the room was packed. Todd started the meeting like usual, droning on about how difficult it was to manage the HOA and how much he'd sacrificed for the community. That's when I stood up. I calmly asked if he could explain some of the discrepancies in the budget. Todd laughed nervously and said, "I don't think this is the time or place." I replied, "Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time." I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room. The mood shifted instantly. People started reading, whispering, and then shouting. Todd tried to regain control, but it was too late. I called for a vote to remove him as president. By the end of the night, Todd was out. After Todd was removed, we hired an independent auditor to go through the HOA's finances. They confirmed everything. Todd had embezzled over $50,000, mismanaged tens of thousands more, and committed multiple counts of fraud. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. But it didn't end there. Todd's shady contractor buddy was also exposed and banned from doing business in the county. Todd had to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His name became a running joke in the neighborhood, and no one would touch him professionally. With Todd gone, we restructured the HOA to prevent another dictator from taking over. We implemented term limits, required multiple board members to approve financial decisions, and created an online portal so all homeowners could access budgets and meeting minutes. Every time I walk past Todd's old house, now owned by a lovely family, I smile. The pool is open, the landscaping is beautiful, and the HOA fees are lower than ever. Todd, meanwhile, moved to a neighboring town, where he reportedly tried to join another HOA board, only to be laughed out of the room when someone Googled his name. Justice wasn't just served, it was plated, garnished, and savored. Got rude guy arrested for suspended license. The story takes place about 20 years ago. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town, where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We'd play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. A guy shows and takes our spot at the billiards table. No big deal, we were all chatting anyway. 20 minutes later, my friend lets him know we want to play the next game, and the jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game, so I politely let him know we wanted to play next. Another lady chimed in she wanted the game after us. The guy blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time went by and the guy left the table. We see our chance to get in. We put the quarters in and the balls are dispensed, except the green 6 ball. The guy took it to the bathroom with him. At this point, it was ridiculous and we notified the manager. The manager noted it was 12:30 and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so he didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. He gets us another ball so we can play. The guy comes out of the bathroom and knows we realized what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a cigarette, carrying his beer and the green billiard ball. The guy comes back in and tossed the ball he was holding onto the table, hitting a few balls on the table and messing up our game. He goes up to the bar just in time for last call. One of the friends I was with suggested we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. 3 of 4 of us agree. So when he leaves, we used our trusty Nextel push-to-talk phones and coordinated several calls to the police. We provided details like license plate, vehicle make, and model and color, and mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lines, and driving erratically. This was under a 15-minute plan. We had no idea where the guy lived, but suspected it was close, as he was visiting a neighborhood place, so our time was limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed the jerk and called us giddy when a police officer pulled between him and the guy and turned on his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrest of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for a DWI, but instead for driving on a suspended license. Anyway guys, that's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. And as always, if you enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Reddit content like this. So have an awesome day everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.